The fatal shooting took place 8 months ago, but it wasn't until June that we first saw the body camera footage. For 4 months after the shooting, sheriff's officials only described the killing as an officer-involved shooting that resulted in Guilford's death and Frost's injuries. Now we'd like to bring in the Guilford's family lawyer. Attorney Hugh Davis is representing Devon's parents. He's the managing member at the Constitutional Litigation Association firm in Detroit, and he joins us now over the phone. Counselor, we understand the family is suing Eaton County and Officer Frost. Can you walk us through the main objective with this lawsuit? Is the goal to seek payment for damages, or is this a lawsuit to push for a criminal trial of murder charges against Officer Frost?
Primarily, it's to have a federal jury declare that what happened to Devon Guilford was illegal and unconstitutional because the prosecutor declined to pursue the criminal proceedings. I wrote the prosecutor a letter yesterday asking him to reconsider his decision regarding the prosecution of Frost based on our analysis of the case and the legal issues we brought forward.
If he doesn't accept your letter and he keeps his decision as is, does that close the book on any criminal charges against Officer Frost?
Makes it extremely unlikely. I've advised the family that they can go to the Michigan Attorney General, who has the authority to bring charges under state law, and I've also advised them that they can apply to the Justice Department of the federal government, Civil Rights Division, and try to induce them to bring violation of civil rights charges.
So as we've said here, Eaton County Prosecutor Doug Lloyd, he decided to clear Frost of any wrongdoing whatsoever, never putting that decision even up to a grand jury. And so we expect that your lawsuit will focus a lot on that decision. Moving on here, Officer Frost's body camera footage, it shows the interaction in the early stages, in the beginning, during the vocal and verbal altercation. But during the most crucial time, at the end, the body camera view is largely obstructed. We might have learned more about what happened there, but his dashboard camera was also not on. We don't even know if one was equipped. We also know of at least one other fatality from a police shooting in Eaton County where the dashboard cameras were not operational. The deputy described this vehicle as a brand new one. Why wasn't there a dashboard camera?
We don't know. We are in the process of investigating. We think that this vehicle was sent in for repairs or modifications after the incident. And indeed, there are some people who are following the case and sending us suggestions that are suggesting that the vehicle that they claim was involved, in fact, was a different one. We don't know yet. We're trying to find out.
A lot of people have also asked why Devon Guilford was ever even pulled over in the first place. There is a state law that allows an officer to pull a motorist over for flashing bright lights at an oncoming vehicle closer than 500 feet. Most officers would probably let that go without even pulling anyone over. Other officers that did pull someone over would probably let them go with just a warning or a stern caution. Devon repeatedly refused to provide his driver's license, though. We later learned that he left it at his girlfriend's house. At that point in the interaction, is it the common practice, or have you found any trend in the Eaton County Sheriff's Department to take a driver into custody at that stage?
No, and in fact, your description of the law isn't correct. It is a civil infraction to shine your lights into the eyes of an oncoming vehicle within 500 feet, but nothing prohibits flashing.
Okay.
And because it is a civil infraction, the idea that you could be arrested is simply not in the law. So the officer committed 2 Fourth Amendment violations before the physical encounter.
Well, thank you for clarifying that for me. And so that was the what was the second violation of the Fourth Amendment then?
First was stopping him in the first place, and second was ordering the car to be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that a third is treating it like a felony arrest and forcing him to get down on his knees and then lay face down in the snow. That's not something you do even if you have a right to give a ticket.
And we also know that it is legal to video record your interaction, your private interaction with a law enforcement officer. We saw the officer in the video kick the phone out of Devin's hand while he was laying down face first. The sheriff's office, however, released a statement just a few days ago. They said that their internal review found Officer Frost did not violate any policies or procedures. That's hard for a lot of people to swallow. What does that tell us about their protocols? Frost did not wait for backup before forcibly opening the door and reaching inside to pull Devin out. Is the Eaton County Sheriff's Department training their officers to de-escalate any verbal confrontations?
Well, we don't know. Obviously, this officer didn't. Regarding the Eaton County prosecutor, you should understand, his office is in the same building or adjacent to the same building as the sheriff. There's nothing independent about his review of the case. He's been working with this detective for years, obviously, and taking him to court and relying on his credibility. The chances that he was going to make a decision to prosecute a guy that he was going to be living with the rest of his career is just simply ludicrous.
Well, and you mentioned credibility, and that's something I'd like to bring up here, too. For some reason, the prosecutor is pointing to a toxicology report where he alleges they found traces of THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, in Devin's blood tests. We've seen many cases in the past where law enforcement has tried to characterize a victim as a criminal by planting drugs on them or claiming they were high. Have you or has the family seen this toxicology report, and do you plan on disputing that claim in your suit?
No. Well, we've seen it, but we don't plan on disputing it. There's no question that Devin was an occasional user of marijuana. He wasn't high or under the influence at the time of this incident.
And the officer, it is also important to point out...
He's not much different than other teenagers.
That's true, and it's also important to point out that at no time during the video that we watched did the officer suspect or verbally mention that Devin was acting high or under the influence of any narcotics or any drugs. The video is rather difficult to watch toward the end. We mentioned this earlier. There's not a lot of lighting, and it does appear that the camera becomes obstructed at one point. There are, however, a few freeze frames that do show Devin up off the ground after he was tased, facing the officer. It's hard to make out, but it appears as though there's a front of a head facing the officer. How do you overcome the challenge that you're going to be presented by the Eaton County Sheriff's Department when they show that freeze frame and show later the injuries to the officer's face? Then they're going to allege that Devin assaulted him.
Two things. One, in Michigan, under a case called People v. Romero, a person has a right to resist the illegal use of force or excessive use of force by an officer. And when this guy decided to taser Tevin while he lay face down, at that point, that was clear excessive force, and that's when Devin reacted. Second, those injuries on that officer's face, I believe, once I believe that is a semi-staged photograph. There's no question that he bled, and they showed that picture. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the picture of him cleaned up, then that wound to his forehead is clearly not from a punch. The autopsy report doesn't show Devin wearing any rings or anything. It appears to us that when the officer went down, he hit his head on a rock or on a piece of ice, and that's what caused that injury.
Of course, it was a cold, snowy night in February in Michigan there, and the surroundings, from what the officer's report says, they fell into a ditch there. So you'll be calling into question the validity of the claim that it was Devin who struck the officer in the face and caused those injuries.
Yes.
All right, Attorney Hugh Davis, thanks for your input this evening. There's still a long way to go in this case, and we'll continue to cover any new developments.